Hello everyone, I'm Annie Wu and I'm here today with Future Voice, which is a national nonprofit public awareness campaign to increase civic engagement among the younger generations. We're here today at the iconic Love City Brewing in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is the home of democracy and also Taylor Swift, and we are here to talk about reproductive rights in America. I'm going to pass it to our panelists to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Anna Snap. I am an actor, content creator, and medical educator, and I'm based in Philadelphia.
Hi, I'm Kenny Scriven. I'm a content creator, beauty and lifestyle creator, and I'm currently in my Elle Woods Legally Blonde era.
Hi, I'm Vera Adair. I'm a full-time digital strategist based in DC and a part-time meme lord.
So let's get into a very hot topic, which is reproductive rights. I am going to start and read the definition, and I'm going to use this so that I make sure I get it right. Reproductive rights is defined as the rights of an individual to control and make decisions relating to reproduction and childbearing, especially with regard to contraception and abortion. And I feel like it's important because we have the words like contraception and abortion, but reproductive rights encapsulates more than that. But I also think with that, it's important that we say things like contraception and abortion. What conversations are you having as young people about repro rights, about abortion, about IVF, about contraceptives?
I know my first introduction to reproduction rights was honestly in college. I've had a lot of friends that were kind of promiscuous, and they would have one night stands, and then the next day they would be like, oh my God, I need to take a plan B.
I mean, I grew up in an environment that was very, very much in the Bible Belt. We were taught abstinence-only education throughout sex ed, throughout my childhood. I had to piece a lot together from the internet, really, and trying at such a young age, at such an impressionable age, to parse out what I actually needed to know and what was actually useful to me. But I would agree that it really clicked into place when I got to college, because I was an adult now. I had freedom to some degree to do whatever I wanted to do. I had to kind of take a crash course, and it felt like my body was almost a weapon for the first time. Something could happen in the blink of an eye that felt like it would ruin my life if I didn't have full control over it.
I feel like the first thing that comes to mind is that it's such a woman's girlfriend's thing, topic of conversation, what birth control are you on? Oh, I'm getting a new IUD next week. I hooked up with this guy and this is what happened. And it's just it's a human thing. And like you said, it's been from the beginning of time that we're talking about these topics. They just look different in terms of technology almost, but it's the same ideas.
It's such a good point too. The technology of it all is something I've been thinking a lot about over the past year or so, or couple of years. We got birth control for the first time, I believe, in the 60s, was when the pill was invented. We've had condoms before that. IVF has been around for decades. We've had abortion access on a nationwide level. We had it for almost 50 years. All of those things happened because there was a demand for it, because people have always wanted to be in more control of their bodies and more control over their family planning. And to see sort of a withdrawal of a lot of that and a tax on a lot of that, it's just not actually natural, and it's not speaking to the progress of humanity.
It's also we in life, we have a lot of reasons why we won't feel in control of what's going on. And so when you aren't able to make a decision about what you want to do with your body, it can feel very much like a violation. It can feel well, what am I doing in this thing that I'm just breathing and living in every day, and it's bringing me to work, it's bringing me to hang out with people. Why can't I decide what I'm doing with it?
What do you guys feel like young people, or just people in general, are afraid to ask or talk about when it comes to abortion and reproductive rights as subjects?
At least from my experience, I feel a lot of people are afraid to talk about abortion in general. I feel some people just don't feel comfortable just talking about it, but I know a lot of people have had them. You just wouldn't know that they've had them.
People are afraid to share their own experiences, which is kind of a part of the culture of shame that allows us to roll back reproductive rights, because not enough people are kind of coming out loud and proud and saying, like, I had this experience for whatever reason and it was the right choice for me, and I'm happy about this every day. And
There's two parts of my identity that I feel like really tie into this conversation for when I think about this, which I think about it a lot, is one, on a sort of lighter side, I'm someone who doesn't want kids. I live with chronic health conditions. I don't see them in the cards for my career, my lifestyle, everything, and my health status. I'm also a survivor of rape. And so I think what's hard for me sometimes is that people are afraid, I think, to just say, I don't want kids. Like, abortion has to be this like really horrible, hard choice. When some people, it's not a hard choice. It's just, this is not the right time in my life. It's just a practical decision.
Sense.
And I think the thing is that is hard for me living in both those identities at once is that if you look at any of the statistics about what's going on, there'll be the disclaimer, but in cases of like rape or incest, it's okay for you to get an abortion. So a person's body has to be violated in order for them to then have a choice about what to do with their body. And to me, living with both those things in my mind, where I'm like, on the light side, I don't want kids. On a darker side, that's a very real part of my past, if I hadn't had access to emergency contraception, if something were to happen again to me or any of my friends or people I know, they may not have access to that. And either decision is valid, whether you have been violated or not.
Well, I'm so sorry you experienced that, and like, thank you for sharing. But you're so right that people shouldn't have to experience something horrible to like have rights over what to do with their body. They should just have that because they're a human being.
There's also this idea too of like, just have the baby. I'm like, what do you mean just have the baby? It's taken me decades literally to get on the right meds that I can't be pregnant on.
Yeah.
Absolutely cannot be pregnant. If I want to be happy, healthy, and stable, I cannot be with child.
Pregnancy is
inside
a
your
trauma
body.
to the body.
It's a trauma. The number of friends I've had who have had babies and have had absolutely horrific pregnancies, which is also not talked about, by the way. We talk about the pregnancy glow. We do not talk about the difficult parts of pregnancy. It's not just having a child. Oh, okay, 9 months out of my life,
Yeah.
like we're good.
It's going to change my body forever, and it's also potentially going to be the most like painful and traumatic physical experience of my life.
Yeah.
This definitely makes me think about some of the states where even if something were horrible to happen, they still would have to
can't.
follow through.
Yeah.
Which is definitely like concerning. I've heard of people crossing state borders just to like get that, contraception, and it just, yeah.
Well, we know that it hits like marginalized communities and people already being oppressed more than others. Like privileged people will always have access, always have had access, because it's one thing to have the rights, but then it's the other thing to be able to access care.
And isn't that funny? So this is something I always think about on this topic, which is like, what is the real true reason for people who are very vehement about rolling back reproductive rights? Because I think we're always told that it has to do with like the sanctity of life, or that people just really, love to see families blossom and believe that like fetuses have rights, and that we should be creating more babies, or that sex is like this sacred thing between husband and wife, as it were. But I also think like there's something much more sinister going on here, because as you mentioned, people with the means will always be able to access this procedure in some way or another, and people who don't will be forced to bring children into the world who will be stuck in whatever socioeconomic status their parents have, which is probably not that high if they weren't able to travel out of state to access something. It seems obvious to me that a lot of this conversation has an even more sinister undertone beyond just restricting people's access to, we want to create people who are stuck without a lot of opportunity, because that's beneficial to the upper classes.
Like, just say the conversation is about, we care about children, we care about families. Then when the baby is born, where is the extended parental leave? Where
Right.
is the access to mental health resources? Where's the access to healthcare? Where's the access to
Childcare.
more money, childcare, And I just think that that's where I think that when we're talking about the importance and sanctity of life, it's like, okay, well,
Are you going to care for the life
Are you
once
gonna
it's in the world?
are we picking and choosing which lives are more valuable?
And the life of the mother
Yeah.
or the parent when they have ectopic pregnancies. And there's things concerned about the life of the mother or the person carrying the child. Like those are considered by like as a medical procedure an abortion. And the medicines and the things that they have to do, it's an abortion, and that is the healthcare term. And so it's like there is a life that is also important, which is the person carrying, and a lot of these laws and beliefs that some people have and bans like want to not care about that life at all. And when we're talking about the communities that are most impacted or maybe most worried about some of these bans that are happening, now in specific states, as people were deciding on like schools, and we have a friend who has a little sister, and she was looking at schools in different places, and some states, if she needed to get care, she could, and some states she couldn't. And that's like as a young person, again, like also maybe exploring your sexuality when you get to college, and young people, like they're not going to be able to travel out of state. Like they have now all this college debt. Like if I was going to college, would be thinking about as I'm choosing like what university I'm going to spend 4 years at.
There may be, young people out there who are going to college and they are maybe not thinking about this specifically too, but it might affect them down the line.
Right.
I know, I have a little sister, she's like 13, and I know she's probably not even thinking like this far right now, but she will go to college at some point, and I'm just like, I can't imagine her going through something really difficult and not having access to, reproductive rights. So that's why I'm really passionate, because I just feel like I want my little sister to have like the best care possible, and if she does like encounter something at some point, that she will, have access to healthcare.
A lot of the worst case scenarios, like they can't fathom it until it happens to someone that they care about. So many people, like you had said earlier, that have had abortions or have had to have certain procedures, and they don't necessarily talk about it. But because of that, I think some people like don't realize that there are people in their lives that have been personally impacted by these things.
Way more people than you would think. Like as we're sitting here, just this week, the 22nd state to enact an abortion ban since the end of Roe v. Wade, since the Dobbs decision, Iowa, they just had a 6-week abortion ban take effect, which puts a significant number of reproductive age Americans in states where they cannot safely, easily access an abortion before they would even know they're pregnant. The Southeast essentially has become a reproductive rights desert. You really can't access it. There are places in Florida in particular where the drive time to access a safe abortion 2 years ago would have been about half an hour. That's now up to 12. And if their abortion clinics in their home state are more crowded, even though they still have rights there, because everyone's swarming in to just half of the country, it not only illustrates the fact that like this should just be a right everywhere, and was until very, very recently, but also that like we're putting so much pressure on this system.
Well, even in Pennsylvania, I mean, Pennsylvania is a huge state. I drive around it way too much. This state is so big, and we still don't have access everywhere. There's not a clinic that does the procedure of abortion in all 67 counties. Like the United States, we have states that are huge, but the country is huge. And when we're talking about access and how where these abortion bans and things like that are taking effect, they're largely in like condensed areas, which make it really difficult.
And also going back to like people who may not have the resources to even pay for gas to drive
or
12
take
hours.
the day off work.
Or take the day off work. Abortion is legal in Pennsylvania up to 24 weeks, I think. But then you have to receive counseling that's normally encourages you against getting an abortion, and you have to wait 24 hours between when you get the counseling and when you can actually get the abortion. A lot can happen in 24 hours if you are in like severe need of an abortion.
And we're also all privileged to sit here even knowing these facts. Like if something were to happen to any of us, any of our friends, like we could help them, like we know how to navigate this stuff because we've informed ourselves of this. We should live in a country where you don't have to know every single rule, law, regulation of your state to be able to access basic care.
And I can't help but think about like towns like Saylorsburg that's in like the middle of nowhere. Just like where do those people go, you know, without feeling like ashamed?
I've a safety net to fall back on if something were to happen, and that's not the case for everyone. So it's both real that things have happened to me and my friends and people I know, but also I'm not in the most vulnerable of communities. There are people out there who are not experiencing the same privilege and should be able to have the understanding and access and ability to navigate their way through this healthcare system that is broken.
I don't think in my lifetime, or at least in like the time where I'm like of reproductive age, that I will probably ever feel true comfort about this issue. It would be very, very scary if I were to find out I was pregnant right now, and thankfully I have the resources I need to manage that and have for many years, and like could access an abortion if I needed to, can still access reproductive care. But I'm very worried about the potential for a national ban, which is not just, you know, an abstract concept that people are fear-mongering about. It's something that a lot of people in power actually genuinely want.
And I think like the whole conversation around could they ever get rid of Roe? And some people don't even know what, you know, Roe was, which was the decision that allowed people the right to have an abortion federally from 1973. But then the Dobbs decision that happened, which was named after the court case in 2022, and that decided that it would go to the states, which is the whole states argument is so ironic to me. The idea is that states are unique, and so states should be able to choose what makes sense for the citizens of their state. And then, but if you take that same logic and you say, well, you know, Philadelphia is very different than where I'm from in Pennsylvania, Hanover, the way, like, they are very different places. So why don't, you know, we take it down to the counties? Why don't we take it down to the cities? And then, like, we're in the city of Philadelphia. There are people in this brewery that are very different than me. So, like, let's take it down to, like, people deciding what makes sense for them uniquely. And, like, that is what choice is.
But Annie, that's crazy.
But it's logic. It's logic. But like that's why the argument of like the states just is like so bizarre to me.
It's so bizarre.
So as we talked about, there's a lot of misconceptions, misinformation out there when it comes to abortion and reproductive rights. And so we're gonna play a little game. I'll give you these whiteboards. You do not need to know everything. Just take your best guess. So the first one is how many out of 10 are in favor that people should have right to reproductive health care? Like zero to 10.
Do we just turn around and
Okay,
show
1,
you?
2, 3, go. 6, 8. It is 8, which is like it is a very popular. So 8 out of 10 people believe that people should have access to reproductive health care.
Wow.
Shocking. The second question is, what percentage of women of childbearing age live in a state where they could not get an abortion? Okay.
65%?
65, 60, 45. So 33, which is, you guys were like way more doomsday. 67% though of this 33 believe that abortion should be legal in most cases. So they live somewhere, they believe they should be able to have access, and they don't. Next question is true or false? Abortion rates tend to be lower in countries where abortion is illegal. True,
I don't know why I'm-
false, false. So it is false. So rates are similar, according to research conducted by the Guttmacher Institute and the World Health Organization, that abortion rates are actually slightly higher, just slightly higher in countries where it's illegal. They're pretty similar. So we know that bans don't stop abortions from
I
happening.
was thinking that earlier. I was like, if there was like a national ban, like people are still gonna get
No,
them.
people are still, and they're gonna be, again, people are gonna go and get it where they need it, or they're gonna do it in ways that it's unsafe.
That's like how people are going to still have sex even if their schools tell them to abstain.
Right. So next question, as it stands, what percentage of abortions happen in the first trimester of pregnancy? Okay, so I'm asking this because there's obviously a lot of conversation around late-term abortions and this term that like is not really a thing, because 93
I was close.
That
you were
was
close.
93,
Wow.
which is really high. Most
gonna win.
abortions happen in the first trimester of pregnancy, and only about 1% occur after 20 weeks. And right now, doctors generally consider a fetus viable at 24 weeks.
It's almost like people know their body as well.
True or false? Abortion rates have been steadily increasing in the last 50 years, aka since Roe v. Wade first passed. All three false, and you're all three correct.
Yes.
So it's false. The United States has an abortion rate that's actually been declining steadily since the 80s, and it's reached its lowest point since Roe v. Wade in just recent years. And as we talked about earlier, like the increase of contraceptives and different types, I'm sure plays a part into why people haven't needed to get this care, because they had other options to not even get pregnant in the first place. So let's see the points.
Just
2, 4. Wow.
Give a speech.
But that just shows that, we don't know everything, but a lot of those statistics are probably a little surprising.
As bad as it is that anybody in this country lives in a state where abortion is banned at some level, it is comforting to know we all overshot that a lot. I think goes to show, like, there's time to reverse, like, the Dobbs decision, like, this was horrible, like, there's things to be done to correct course here.
And it's not too late.
Right.
I think that's part of the plan, it seems, is to make it seem like it's too late.
Yeah.
So that a lot of people are just
give
like,
up.
they're giving
We
up.
get used
Yeah.
to, like, not having this
Yeah.
anymore, and that's not how it should be.
Yeah, because it's 1/3 of women, but most of those women also that can't receive care, which is very sad, in their state, they believe that they should be able to receive care, and they should be able to receive care. So for the next section, because we care about facts, I'm gonna give you some fact sheets, and I just want you to start to look over them. They're very nitty gritty. Are there any that you guys find surprising or interesting? I mean, it starts out pretty shockingly to me. The first fact on here, that nearly 1 in 4 women in the US have had an abortion by age 45, which just shows, again, like, it's very common. I feel like everyone has someone in their life who, whether they know it or not, has likely had an abortion.
Well, number 4, it says economic factors, 75% of abortion patients are low income. That just goes like straight back to what we were talking about not having the resources. I mean, I am someone who's getting a new IUD in like a few weeks, and I have insurance through my employer, and it is still expensive. And so if you don't have health insurance, or you don't even have the money to pay your co-pays and for the procedure, because it is it's technically like a near towards a surgical procedure, because you're inserting the IUD into your cervix. It's expensive at the very least.
And the age demographics are really interesting. It says the majority of abortion patients are in their 20s, which means that this is predominantly an issue that's affecting our generation, our friends, our loved ones, Gen Z people in America.
The fact that I found the most shocking is the geographic disparities. As of 2023, about 86% of U.S. counties do not have a known abortion provider.
And as Anna was saying, like, it's already such an issue to access healthcare. Now imagine you have what is a simple outpatient procedure and sometimes just a medication that you take facilitated by a doctor, and there's no one in your town to give it to you.
Obviously, it came up earlier, the Dobbs decision. I think you brought it up initially, Barrett. Do you remember, maybe you start of like where you were, how you felt when this happened?
Yeah, I think, to quote the iconic Hannah Montana song, 1 in a Million, how did we get here? So we, as Annie mentioned earlier, Roe v. Wade was the Supreme Court decision that gave everyone in America a right to an abortion. It was protected under one of our constitutional amendments. And then in 2022, we had an abnormally outsized conservative majority on the Supreme Court. 3 of those justices were appointed by one president, our former president, Donald Trump, alone. These are people who are considered opponents of Roe v. Wade being placed in the highest court of the land. So everything has to go through a process, but a few years after they've all been sitting on the bench, a case comes to their desk for them to make a decision on. We shorthand it as Dobbs, and their decision overturned that federal right to an abortion and returned the decision to the states. Now, what's funny is that many states' legislatures and governors were geared up for this decision in a very sinister way. Many states actually seized on an opportunity to strip rights away from their citizens before it was even legal to strip rights away, knowing that by the time anyone had time to file a lawsuit against what they were doing, the Supreme Court would have already done their dirty work for them. And that's how we ended up there. It was a long game. It was a very strategic decision on the part of people who wanted to see this overturned.
Yeah, and they were appointed knowing that they would be voting this way, or ruling.
It was a massive priority of each of those 3 newer justices on the Supreme Court, and it's been a priority of the 3 who were there longer for a long time.
Also, a majority of people who don't ever need to think about if they'll need an abortion were a part of this ruling.
Only one of the justices that agreed with that majority decision to overturn the right to an abortion is a woman herself.
We talk about the Supreme Court, but we also talk about this. We never thought Dobbs would happen. We never thought Roe would be overturned. And I think that leads to this question of what can we count on? What else can be overturned? Whether we know it's going to be birth control, we know that it's going to be IVF, and how there's going to be this ripple effect, this snowball of getting more and more rights and liberties stripped away from us.
And it's not just talk either, right? So recently, the Senate took votes on ensuring access for all Americans to contraception. They also took another vote ensuring access for all Americans to the IVF procedure, in vitro fertilization, a procedure that helps a lot of people have children who can't conceive. Many people in power voted against that. That should not be something you're voting against, not for nothing, but why is that controversial? Why is that political? A lot of people in that Senate chamber used IVF to conceive their own children, or their partners did. Overturning Roe was a concerted effort over multiple decades, and the people who are largely responsible for that are taking credit for it and bragging about it to their friends, to their supporters. So they had this big win, so to speak. And they are coming for every other part of reproductive rights. They are coming for IVF. They are coming for any kind of contraception.
Everything that's happening is not a coincidence. It is very intentional. And if you think for a second that it can't get worse, it absolutely can get worse. It can definitely get worse. And believe people when they tell you they're going to do something, because they will do it. They're going to come for these people, and then they're going to come for those people. And if you think that what's coming up in the next few months doesn't affect you, when I am thinking about these topics, you almost have to think about it, because even if you think it doesn't affect you, it will. Even if it doesn't today or tomorrow, it will affect you some point.
Or someone in your life, or
someone,
you
yeah.
know,
And it's about care. It's about community.
This is about anybody's right to start a family using technology to help them start a family. This is about anybody's right to practice safe sex, to be able to go to the drugstore and get some Trojans and go to town. We should all be able to do that.
Right.
I remember I was in the Burger King drive-thru when I heard about the Dobbs decision, and I immediately was just like, what? This is crazy. This is insane. And that was definitely the first thing that kind of drew my attention more to the political space, because I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. And as a gay person who is engaged to a white guy, I'm also thinking about gay marriage. So I feel they start with women and then it just goes down the line.
I don't know what your family planning would be, but you would want, I'm sure, the option to have children if you wanted to.
Definitely.
They would be getting rid of that option for you and your future family.
And celebrities do IVF. Paris Hilton, Kim Kardashian. I feel it's just such a normal thing that more people should just allow to happen. It's part of life.
And also, people are very aware that this is, although yes, it's a women's issue, it's a people issue and a people with uteruses issue, because not all people with uteruses are women. there's trans men, there's non-binary folks, and that is obviously that intersectionality of being in the LGBTQ community is that then becomes an issue for different communities. It's like when I found out about the Dobbs decision, I remember I left work early because I was like, I can't do this. I was freaking out. And what's so crazy is that it's gotten so much worse since then, but we do have more control than we think. And that's why I feel like these conversations are so important, because like we've talked about, a lot of people think that the end has already come. And the
Absolutely
end could
not.
come, but it's not here. It just started.
It just started, but we can stop it. Also, I'll add, as an adoptee, we get thrown into the mix of like, well, if just give birth to the baby and then give it up for adoption. Let's talk about like the support that we give to our foster care system. Let's talk about like how many children need adopted in this country, and then when there are in these systems, what lack of resources there are. They place these things on like my community and saying like, well, aren't you lucky you weren't? And I'm like, no, like I want everyone to be able to choose what is best for them. They'll know, I wouldn't have known.
Also,
It's kind of like morbidly funny, but I just saw like a tweet about this in the past like couple days or something, and it was literally like an educational like CGI video of like, this is the development of a fetus, and somebody had quote tweeted and said, I don't remember any of this shit, dog. And I was like, exactly.
Literally.
And for the record, I'm staving off that possibility by using contraception.
But if it were to happen, because contraception doesn't always work, and they do fail, and so having an option to then make another decision about your body and your future should be perfectly valid. I mean, it is perfectly valid, but legally it should be perfectly valid. Also, like, I want to acknowledge that we're sitting here as like the girlies and the gays, like, but it's not just our issue, it's everyone's issue, and it takes two types of things to make a baby. The straight men, like, they need to care about this too.
Well, because let's be real, like you said, we were talking about abstinence earlier. People are going to have sex. Like it's a human fact. People are going to have sex, and if men want to be involved in that room, then you have to be involved in the rooms that come after, like the doctor's office, the birthing room, the rooms that we're going to take care of the kid. You are not out of this just because you are not bearing the child.
And so when we're advocating for reproductive rights and healthcare and access, and then also against the harmful bans that are being put in place, like it's all of us need to be advocating, because all of us are going to be impacted.
And I feel like I have a unique perspective, because before I was gay, well, once upon a time I was straight. And so I would be in like the rooms with like the straight guys essentially, and most of them, like if they had like, a really fun night, but they don't necessarily want to have like a baby after, they would, kind of sway the girl to, take plan B. So I've seen them also really believe in, contraception rights and reproductive rights.
They would much rather send you $50 for a plan B than like be around for the next 18 years. Like,
so yeah.
And to say men are generally, a lot of them, irresponsible about this kind of thing and not thinking about the consequences, the way that people who could carry a baby always have to think about the consequences. If we're not going to have rights to control our own bodies, then baby, it's two to tango. Like, you're gonna be here, you're gonna be at the PTA meeting, you're gonna be spending all the money that you need to spend to uphold your side of this.
And the one other thing I'll add is that there is this like often this dialogue around this particularly where it's like, women are dramatic, it's just a period. Women are overreacting, it's just a pregnancy, it's just this, it's just that. But I know for a fact that most of the men that I have like dated would never want to go through any of the things that I know women are going through, and they wouldn't want to be pregnant.
no.
So it is sort of, it's that lack of empathy, I think, that it comes back to.
So I really enjoyed this conversation, and just wanted to know last thoughts.
Well, I think we talk so much about like how quickly the rollback of rights has happened. Like, it really does feel like just yesterday that the Dobbs decision happened, but that happened 2 years ago, and we're already like 15 other battles deep in the reproductive rights landscape. And this for me is one of the first times I've been able to like really get together with people and talk about all these multifaceted parts of this argument and all the intersectionality of like how this is affecting all types of Americans, all of us, especially young people. So I just appreciated like having this conversation today.
It is important to have these conversations, and you know, I think we're all four very different people coming from different, you know, life experiences, and the fact that we are all concerned about it for both similar reasons and for different reasons is just so telling that this is an issue for people, period. So it was a very good confirmation, and it made me feel weirdly better, as dark as things are.
I've learned that there's still hope. I do feel like a lot of people feel like there's no hope, but you know, our voices matter, and we could put a stop to this now, you know what I mean, if we, you know, continue to use our voices and
talk to each other.
Talk to each other, exactly, and that's the most important thing.
And we're not alone in this, and we've seen the statistics. Abortion and reproductive rights are a widely popular thing among humans, and wanting to have that access. And so there's many more of us if we do the work and continue to, like you said, to use our voices, to talk to each other, to advocate, to not feel like the fight is over, but there is the opportunity to win.